I'm Robert Cassard. Time for yet another video in the Lessons with Lage series. Now these are all based on the group classes I took with Julian this past summer. And I hope you've been along for the ride so far and that you will like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get more of these. Because in part one, Julian helped us rediscover the joy of guitar just by making a simple attitude adjustment. And then part two showed some easy exercises you can use to unblock your lead and rhythm playing. Part three was how to make your practice sessions more productive. And then part four was insights about how to play more memorable guitar solos. So today's lesson is how to set our guitar playing free. How to free yourself from the constraints you've probably self-imposed ever since you started playing. Stay with me. When I say we're going to set ourselves free, what I'm talking about is letting go of always playing close to the rhythmic grid and always inside the key signature and chord structure. See, in jazz, when a musician leaves those constraints behind, it's called playing outside. And when you start exploring that idea, you realize there's an infinite continuum of how far outside you can play. You can stray from the key signature for just a few notes and then come back inside, or you can play whatever you feel like, some inside, some outside the key, or you can play with no key signature at all. That's what academics call atonal music, right? Like no tonal center. So where do we start? Well, first, let's ask why we're playing outside.
I think it's really important to remember that any outside playing needs to have a utility in the dramatic narrative. There's a reason. It's the same thing we do with language all the time. We emphasize things, or we say a word that's unusual, or we don't say a word. You know what I mean? I'd love to see anybody getting into it, incorporate it on a need basis.
Okay, so playing outside has to have some utility, and it's part of a narrative structure, right? Well, Julian also reminds us that playing outside isn't just about tonality. It's actually also about rhythm. Here's what he says about that.
When we're talking about playing outside, we're a lot of times I think without realizing we're talking about rhythm. I don't think it's just tones and pitches and chords.
So here's an example of him just starting to push that boundary.
Tonally speaking, that's other than that thing, but even that's kind of acceptable as being inside, right? But I think we could all say there's a little bit of a leaning towards something slightly more idiosyncratic, right? And I would say it's more the rhythmic phrasing. Ba 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 ah, ba 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 ah. It's not things that are kind of not really on a grid.
So playing a little outside rhythmically immediately spices up your playing. Like when there's a driving rhythm of a tune and you lay back from it and pull against it. Or when you push forward while everything else is clinging to a more rigid tempo. I mean, you hear this all the time in lead guitar solos. In fact, it's really the mark of what we think of as great guitarists, right? They push and pull rhythmically for musical and emotional effect. I mean, play any Hendrix recording and just try to set a metronome to keep time with it. Not gonna happen, right? Jimmy was all over the place rhythmically.
When I'm sad, she comes to me. She gives to me free.
He was really unconstrained and in the flow, and no one ever seems to complain and say, hey, that guy couldn't keep a beat. Great singers do it too. They hold back a little bit or push ahead of the band, and it's a big part of what the audience feels as the heart of their performance. Okay, so that's going outside with rhythm. Now, what about outside melody and harmony? Once you're comfortable going outside the rhythm, it's time to start experimenting with notes and chords, right? Now, I love this ear training exercise Julian recommends. He says you just take a single note and keep it on top of all 12 chords of the chromatic scale. So in this example, Julian plays a C major and then keeps that C note on top of each other major chord. Check out what it sounds like and some of the intriguing chords he finds and the discoveries he makes.
So here's tension. I like that. What do you think of that? It's a little more opaque to me. It's kind of like could be anything. No. So you know, technically speaking, that's an E octave chord. Emotionally speaking, that sounds brighter to me than C major. This is now sounding kind of like kind of sluggish and kind of falling behind. That's got something. Okay. There's F, right? I did this so much growing up. I just registered with everything and it felt like that's pretty cool. Let's go. That's kind of similar to that. They have a similar sprightliness and then so okay. G. Let's switch octaves. A flat. It's like sounds like a resolution, right? You go, but we're in A flat. This is when we started. Okay. I don't want to voice. A with C. I would encourage you to just, you know, in other words, build up a stamina for dissonant intervals and you'll start to miss them when they're gone.
Now, everyone's ear is tuned and trained differently, and it's easy to assume that there's a line in the sand between tonal and atonal, but that line gets blurry the more experience you have listening to and playing music in two different tonal centers. So here's Julian switching back and forth between the notes of the keys of G and C sharp, and he does it all so fluidly. So why not give it a try? I love how Julian puts it.
I would say minimal is the way to introduce it. You're just folding it into the dough, folding it into the dough, folding it into the dough. And eventually you will have a taste for blood, basically. You'll feel weird if you ever are playing in the key.
In other words, you'll become aware of how often you voluntarily lock yourself in the jail of the rhythmic grid and the key signature and the chord progression. And once you get a taste of freedom, you'll rarely, if ever, play the same way and stay all inside again. Now, I want to mention, if you're worried about how the audience might feel about your new musical adventures, go back and watch lesson 1. Julian says you don't really know what the audience is thinking, and you don't owe them anything other than your purest expression. Now, what I've found is that listeners actually thrive on watching and hearing us take risks and take liberties with rigid musical structures. I mean, everybody loves a rebel as long as you have a cause. All right, so unlock yourself and go outside. Get a taste for freedom. Try Julian's techniques, then please come back and tell me how your new freedom feels. Visit guitardiscoveries.com for a couple hundred more videos to help you get and stay inspired, or you can just try this.